On the morning of my birthday, I thought the day would be peaceful and normal. I expected love, warmth, and small celebrations. Instead, I walked straight into the biggest betrayal of my life. My own family, people I trusted, had planned something behind my back, something that would change everything. Their smiles were fake, their words were rehearsed, and their plan was clear. They wanted me gone, out of their way, hidden like a burden. But they had no idea who I truly was and how their betrayal would wake up a strength inside me they never believed existed. The morning of my birthday felt bright, calm, and completely ordinary. I woke up to the soft sounds of birds outside my window and the distant hum of the city below. For most of my life, birthdays had been simple and quiet, nothing dramatic. Maybe a cake, a few laughs, a small family moment. I had never asked for more, never demanded attention or expensive gifts. But this year felt strange. There was a heaviness in the air, an unspoken tension I couldn't explain, like the quiet before a storm. I walked into the kitchen expecting warmth, maybe the smell of tea or coffee, maybe a light-hearted good morning. Instead, I found a strange stillness. My siblings exchanged quick, nervous glances. Mom avoided my eyes, pretending to focus on the tea kettle as if boiling water needed all her attention. Dad stood awkwardly near the table, his shoulders stiff, his smile tight and unnatural. They looked like people practicing a performance rather than a family greeting someone they loved. I noticed it instantly, the way their smiles didn't reach their eyes, the way their voices felt slightly too controlled. But I brushed it aside. Maybe they were planning a surprise for me. Maybe this strange behavior was part of it. I told myself not to overthink, not to assume the worst. After all, it was my birthday. Who would expect betrayal on a day meant for love? The hours moved slowly. Friends called me, wishing me a happy birthday with cheerful voices. I forced myself to laugh along, to act like everything was fine. But something was off. Every moment in the house felt rehearsed, unnatural. The air was too polite, too stiff, like everyone was waiting for something to happen, something they didn't want to say out loud. By the afternoon, they insisted we gather in the living room. The table was already set. Candles arranged neatly, the cake placed in the center like a symbol of celebration. It looked like a normal birthday setup, simple, familiar. But my heart felt uneasy. The calmness in the room didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the quiet center of a storm. My youngest sister cleared her throat. Her voice trembled, not with excitement, but something else. Guilt, maybe. We have something to tell you, she said. I smiled automatically, expecting something small, a family joke, a heartfelt message, maybe a gift. I had no idea they were about to break the ground beneath my feet. Dad spoke next. His tone was gentle, controlled, almost too careful. "It's about your future," he began. His words landed heavily inside my chest. I felt myself tense, unsure why. Then he said it. "We think it might be best if you spent more time at a nursing home." The room spun. A nursing home? For me? On my birthday? I stared at them, waiting for someone to laugh and say it was a joke, but no one did. Their expressions remained serious, relieved even, as if they had finally said something they had been planning for a long time. I felt a cold wave move through my body. "You're serious?" I asked quietly. Mom nodded. "It's for your own good," she said, her voice soft but empty. But I saw it, the flicker of relief in her eyes, the hidden satisfaction. That was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shouting. I was simply awake, more awake than I had been in years. A realization settled inside me like ice. This wasn't concern. This wasn't care. This was convenience. They wanted me gone because it made their lives easier. I sat down slowly, forcing a calmness I didn't know I had. "So," I said softly, "my birthday is actually a farewell party, isn't it?" No one answered, but their silence was the answer. And in that moment, something powerful rose inside me. Not fear, not despair, but a slow, sharp strength. They had underestimated me all my life. This time would be different. This was the moment the storm began. The days after my birthday felt strangely quiet, almost too calm, like the surface of a deep lake hiding powerful currents underneath. On the outside, life moved forward in the same routine. The sun still rose every morning, the city still buzzed with energy, and people still greeted each other with casual smiles. But inside me, something had shifted permanently. I no longer looked at my family with the same trusting eyes. Their betrayal had opened a door inside me, a door to clarity, awareness, and a strength I didn't know I possessed. Each morning, I moved through the house as usual. I poured my coffee, cleaned my cup, arranged my books, and did my chores. Everything looked normal, but my mind was sharp now, alert in ways it had never been before. Every glance, every whisper, every forced smile from my family felt like a clue, a piece of a larger puzzle I had failed to see earlier. They believed I'd accepted their plan. They thought I was shocked, hurt, and silent because I had no choice. They mistook my quietness for weakness, but in reality, I was watching them, carefully, patiently, deliberately. I paid attention to small things, the way my mother avoided my eyes when she spoke to me, the way my siblings whispered in corners, lowering their voices when I walked by, the way my father acted overly polite, as if trying to cover something up. Their behavior wasn't just strange, it was dishonest. I kept my face calm, never reacting. I let them believe they still controlled the situation. That illusion was important, because illusions reveal more than truth sometimes. When people think you are powerless, they show you their real faces. So I waited. I listened. And I learned. I began observing every detail of their conversations. I noticed how they spoke about my future as if I wasn't standing in the room. I saw how they framed their betrayal as concern to make themselves feel innocent. My heart tightened with every lie they tried to dress as love, but instead of confronting them, I chose patience. I knew that reacting too soon would give them the advantage, so I stayed calm, like still water hiding a rising tide. At the same time, something else started happening inside me. I began reconnecting with the outside world. People I hadn't spoken to in years responded warmly when I reached out. Old friends asked about my life, colleagues checked on me, and even strangers treated me with more kindness than my own family. Those small gestures reminded me of something important. I was not alone. I was not powerless, and I was not the helpless person my family imagined me to be. Slowly, I built a quiet network of support, not allies for revenge, yet, but allies for clarity. People who had seen my strength before my family tried to bury it. People who remembered the real me. I also started studying my family's weaknesses, not out of hatred, but out of necessity. If they had planned to control my life, it was only fair that I learned how to take that control back. Every time they whispered behind closed doors, I memorized their words. Every time they made a careless mistake, I stored it like a weapon for later use. The strange thing was, they never noticed. They were too confident, too comfortable in their assumption that I would simply accept whatever they decided for me. They saw me as a burden, slow, harmless. They never realized that the quiet ones are often the ones who think the deepest. At night, I sat alone in my room, feeling the cool air from the window brush against my skin. Those were the hours when my mind became completely clear. I replayed the birthday betrayal over and over, not to hurt myself, but to understand it fully. I looked at every expression, every word, every hesitation, and each time the truth became clearer. They did not act out of love. They acted out of convenience. They wanted an easier life, a life where they didn't have to think about me, help me, or share responsibility. And instead of admitting that truth, they hid behind sweet words and false concern. But knowing the truth didn't break me. It made me stronger. It made me sharper. It made me ready. I began testing them in small ways. A question here, a surprising statement there, just to see how they reacted. Their reactions told me more than their words. When I spoke confidently, they became uneasy. When I asked direct questions, their voices shook. When I smiled calmly at their lies, they grew nervous. They were losing control, and they didn't even realize why. Everything I did during those days had a purpose. Every calm smile, every polite answer, every quiet nod. I was not hiding anymore. I was planning. I was preparing for the moment when I would take back my power completely. They believed the storm was over, but in reality, the storm was only beginning, and this time it belonged to me. The shift inside the house began slowly, almost silently. It was like watching shadows move when the sun changes position. Subtle, but impossible to ignore if you paid enough attention. My family continued their daily routines, pretending everything was fine, pretending they still had control. But I could see the discomfort growing behind their eyes. Something in me had changed, and they felt it, even if they didn't understand it yet. I no longer moved through the house as someone who felt betrayed. I moved like someone who was awake, someone who had finally seen the truth and was no longer blinded by love or trust. My calmness confused them the most. They expected tears, arguments, anger, anything that showed weakness. Instead, they got silence, clarity, and a quiet strength that unsettled them. I responded to their comments politely, sometimes even softly, but never with the submission they hoped for. When they tried to offer advice, I listened with a neutral expression. When they discussed my future, I nodded in a way that made them shift uneasily. They didn't know what I was thinking anymore, and that scared them. They had relied on my predictability, but now I had become unpredictable, unreadable, a mirror that reflected their own guilt back at them. And guilt is a feeling people cannot hide for long. I saw the cracks forming. My mother's smile grew thinner each day. My father avoided looking at me directly. My siblings whispered more frequently, unsure of what I knew or didn't know. Their confidence was slipping, and I didn't have to do anything except stay calm and observe. But while they stumbled in confusion, I moved with purpose. I began rebuilding my life one small piece at a time. I reconnected with old colleagues who respected me. I visited places I hadn't been to in years, places that reminded me who I used to be before my family tried to reduce me into someone dependent and silent. I found comfort in those forgotten spaces, in libraries, quiet cafes, parks where the wind carried away my heaviness. Every step outside the house strengthened me. Every conversation reminded me of the dignity I had almost let slip away. People spoke to me kindly, listened to me sincerely, and treated me as someone valuable. It was a sharp contrast to the false concern and hidden motives inside my home. Slowly, I began forming new connections. Not alliances of confrontation, but alliances of awareness. People who saw my worth. People who looked at me with respect, not calculation. And though I didn't tell them everything, they all sensed something was wrong, something deeper than a simple family disagreement. Their kindness was a reminder. I still had a place in the world, a place my family tried to erase. Inside the house, I continued my silent study. Every whispered conversation, every uneasy glance, every inconsistent detail, they all became pieces of a mental map. I learned who doubted first, who hesitated, who tried to justify their actions. I understood their weaknesses better than ever. My youngest sibling was the easiest to read. She avoided me the most, her guilt almost visible. My mother was the most defensive, trying to pretend everything was normal. My father held himself stiffly, the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on him. And my eldest sibling, the one who often tried to lead, was growing nervous, unsure of their own decisions now that I was no longer reacting the way they expected. This awareness gave me quiet power. I didn't confront them. I didn't shout or accuse. I simply observed. And my silence forced them to confront themselves in ways they never wanted to. At night, I would sit near the window, watching the lights of the city flicker like distant stars. Those moments became my sanctuary. In the darkness, I planned, not revenge born from hatred, but actions born from justice and self-respect. I knew there would be a time when I would speak, not with anger, but with truth so clear and sharp that they could no longer hide behind excuses. I knew there would be a day when the balance would shift completely and they would realize the cost of trying to control my life. But that day was not yet here. For now, I was still preparing, still watching, still gathering strength. My silence became my strategy. My calmness became my shield, and my clarity became my greatest weapon. They thought they had taken control of my life, but with every passing day, I was the one becoming stronger, more aware, more dangerous in my quietness. They had awakened something in me they never expected, a version of me who saw everything clearly, who trusted herself more than anyone else, and who was ready to reclaim her life with precision and dignity. The storm inside me continued to grow, and soon, very soon, it would no longer be a silent one. I stood there, frozen, as the weight of everything finally settled on my shoulders. For a long time, I had tried to stay calm. I had tried to be patient. I had tried to understand. But at that moment, something inside me snapped. I could no longer pretend everything was fine, because nothing was fine at all. Marina kept talking, her words sharp like needles. "You always make things complicated," she said, crossing her arms. "If you had just trusted me, none of this would have happened." Her tone felt cold, almost rehearsed. I blinked slowly, trying to control my breathing. "Trusted you?" I said quietly. "Marina, I trusted you more than anyone, but you hid things. You avoided questions, and now you're acting like it's all my fault." She rolled her eyes as if my pain was an inconvenience. "I didn't hide anything. You just overthink every small detail. You imagine problems even when everything is normal." Normal. That word hurt more than anything. If this was normal, then what did betrayal look like? I looked around the room, noticing how everything felt smaller, tighter. The memories of our good days flickered in my mind, but they no longer felt real. They felt like scenes from someone else's life. "You don't get it," I said, my voice trembling. I wasn't asking for perfection. I was asking for honesty. For the first time, her expression shifted. Not guilt, not regret, just irritation, like I was wasting her time. "I'm tired of repeating myself," she said. "Believe whatever you want. I don't care anymore." My heart dropped. "I don't care anymore." 4 words that erased years of loyalty in seconds. I realized then that I had been holding on to a version of her that no longer existed, maybe one that never existed at all. Maybe the truth had been there all along, but I refused to see it because I wanted the story to end differently. I swallowed hard. "So that's it?" I whispered. "Everything we built means nothing to you?" She shrugged. "People change. Get over it." Those words felt like a door slamming shut. I stepped back, feeling the floor beneath my feet, grounding myself. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to truly feel the hurt, not hide it, not silence it, not explain it away. This was the moment everything shifted, not because of what she said, but because I finally understood. I couldn't stay where my presence no longer mattered. I took a deep breath, wiped the corner of my eye, and turned away, not because I was weak, but because I was finally choosing myself. And for the first time in a long time, the silence felt like freedom. When I walked out of the room, I expected the hallway to feel empty, but instead, it felt strangely alive. Every sound echoed, my footsteps, the distant hum of a fan, even the beating of my own heart. Maybe it felt louder because, for the first time, I wasn't trying to silence it. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes for a moment. I needed space to breathe, to think, to understand what had just happened. But deep down, I already knew the truth. It wasn't a sudden change. It wasn't one fight. It wasn't one mistake. It had been happening slowly, piece by piece. The late replies, the excuses, the sudden distance, the way she avoided simple questions, the way her eyes no longer softened when she looked at me. All those signs had been there, but I refused to accept them. I convinced myself that loyalty meant holding on, even when I was the only one still fighting. I opened my eyes and stared at the empty space ahead of me. It felt like the perfect reflection of my situation, quiet, cold, and full of things left unsaid. My phone buzzed suddenly. It was a message from Ayan. "Bro, are you okay? You left earlier than usual." I stared at the screen for a long time. Ayan had always been the one who noticed my silence before anyone else. He had warned me months ago that something felt off, that Marina wasn't being honest, but I defended her every single time. I typed slowly, "Not really. I think it's over." He replied instantly, "Come over. Don't stay alone right now." A small part of me felt grateful. The rest felt exhausted. Still, I pushed myself forward and walked outside. The air hit my face like a reminder that the world kept moving, even when your heart felt stuck. As I reached the gate, something inside me whispered that this wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of a version of myself. The version that stayed silent to keep peace. The version that accepted half love because I believed it was enough. The version that carried someone else's weight while neglecting my own. A light drizzle started falling, soft and cold. I looked up at the sky. Maybe it was dramatic, but the moment felt too perfect, like the universe was washing away everything I had tolerated for far too long. A car stopped in front of me. Ayan stepped out with the kind of worry only a real friend carries. "You look dead tired," he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. I forced a smile. "I feel worse than I look." He nodded. "Then let's fix that. You're not dealing with this alone." His words hit me harder than I expected. I realized how long I had been fighting by myself, pretending everything was fine, telling everyone I could handle it. But I was done pretending. As I got into the car, I made a silent promise to myself. I would no longer give my heart to people who didn't respect it. This was the beginning of something new. Not a love story, but a healing one. Ayan drove without asking too many questions. He kept the music low, the windows slightly open, letting the cool air fill the car. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel heavy. It felt safe. Safe enough for me to finally let my guard down. After a few minutes, he glanced at me. "You want to tell me what happened?" I exhaled slowly. It wasn't one thing. It was everything. He nodded, waiting. "She doesn't care anymore," I said quietly. "Or maybe she stopped caring a long time ago and I ignored it." Ayan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry, man. You didn't deserve that." Hearing those words felt strange. I had spent months making excuses for her. Stress, misunderstandings, timing. But now, sitting in that quiet car, I couldn't run from the truth. When we reached his place, he led me inside. The warm lights, the familiar sofa, the smell of coffee, it all felt comforting in ways I didn't know I needed. He handed me a glass of water and sat opposite me. "Start from the beginning," he said gently. "Just say it out loud once." So I did. I told him everything, from the subtle changes in her behavior to the final argument. I told him about her cold tone, the way she treated my feelings like they were inconveniences, and how she said she didn't care anymore. The more I spoke, the more real it became. And for a moment, my voice broke. I didn't cry, but the pain showed itself clearly in my words. Ayan listened without interrupting, without judgment. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Let me ask you one thing," he said. "If you saw someone treat me the way she treated you, what would you tell me?" I looked down. "I'd tell you to walk away." He nodded. "Exactly. Because love isn't supposed to make you feel small. It's not supposed to drain you." His words hit me hard, not because they were new, but because they were true. I had been shrinking myself to fit into a place where I no longer belonged. For the first time, I accepted that the relationship had ended long before today. I was just the last one to admit it. Ayan stood up, grabbed his car keys, and tossed them onto the table. "Come on," he said. "We're going for a drive." I frowned. "Where?" "Somewhere you can breathe." I didn't argue. We drove out to a quiet hill on the edge of the city, a place we used to visit when we were younger. The view was simple but calming. Street lights scattered like tiny stars, the night sky stretching endlessly. As we sat on the hood of the car, Ayan looked at me. "Do you know what the real problem is?" he asked. "What?" "You gave her all your heart, but you forgot to keep even a small piece for yourself." I swallowed hard. He was right. "I don't even know how to start again," I admitted. "You don't have to know," he said. "You just have to decide that you will." The wind brushed against my face, carrying the scent of night flowers and rain-soaked ground. For the first time in months, I felt a small spark of clarity, like the beginning of healing. Maybe things had fallen apart. Maybe the hurt was real. But maybe, just maybe, this was the moment I would rise again. This wasn't the end of my story. Just the end of a chapter I had held onto for too long. The next morning, sunlight slipped into the room through the half-open curtains. I hadn't slept much, but somehow I felt lighter than the day before. Not healed, not complete, just lighter. Like a heavy stone had finally been lifted from my chest. Ayan was already awake, sitting at the kitchen counter with 2 cups of tea. "You look terrible," he said with a small smile. "Thanks," I replied, chuckling. "I feel terrible." "But better than yesterday?" I nodded slowly. "A little." He slid a cup toward me. I wrapped my hands around it, letting the warmth seep into my palms. We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "You know, healing doesn't happen in one night," he said. "Some days will hurt. Some days will feel normal. You just have to let the process happen." I stared at the steam rising from the cup. "It's hard to let go of someone you thought would stay." "I know," he said softly, "but holding on to the wrong person only stops the right things from finding you." His words settled inside me like a quiet truth. After breakfast, I stepped outside for some air. The world looked strangely peaceful. People walking their dogs, kids playing, cars passing by. Life was moving forward, even if I felt stuck. I pulled out my phone and opened my chat with Marina. For a moment, I thought about sending a message. Something simple, something safe. "Take care. I hope you're okay. Let's talk." But then I stopped. Why was I still trying? I realized I wasn't trying to fix the relationship. I was trying to hold on to closure I would never get from her. She had already turned the page. I was the only one reading the old chapter over and over. So, I made a choice. I deleted the chat. It didn't erase the memories. It didn't erase the pain. But it felt like clearing a space inside my mind, a space I desperately needed. A moment later, my phone buzzed. Another message from Ayan. "Ready to step out?" I replied. "Yeah, let's go." We went for a long walk. No destination, no pressure, just movement. He talked about random things to make me laugh. I listened, letting the world distract me for a little while. At one point, he asked, "Do you regret loving her?" I thought about it seriously. "No," I said finally. "I just regret loving her more than she loved me." "That's not your failure," Ayan said. "That's her loss." We kept walking until the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft orange and purple. The world felt calm, and for the first time in a long time, my thoughts felt calm too. That evening, when I returned to the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed and took a deep breath. I realized something important. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean your feelings were wrong. It simply means you're finally choosing peace over pain. I wasn't fully healed yet, but I had taken the first real step. And sometimes, a single step is all you need to change the direction of your whole life. That night, after everything had calmed down, I sat by the window and watched the quiet street outside. The world seemed softer somehow. Maybe it was the dim street lights, maybe it was the cool air, or maybe it was the simple truth that I had finally stopped fighting a losing battle. Healing doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with fireworks or loud moments. Sometimes, it begins in silence, just like this. As I sat there, I thought about everything that had happened. The arguments, the distance, the final conversation that shattered everything. For weeks I had blamed myself. I wondered what I could have done differently, what I could have fixed, what I should have noticed sooner. But now, for the first time, I understood something clearly. You cannot force someone to value what they choose to ignore. You cannot save a relationship alone. You cannot hold together something that the other person has already let go of. And that realization didn't break me. It freed me. Ayan knocked on the door softly. "Bro, you good?" he asked. I turned and nodded. "Yeah, I think I'm finally getting there," he smiled. "Good, because your life doesn't end here. This is just a reset." He sat beside me, looking out the window too. "Do you want my honest opinion?" he asked. "Always." "You lost someone who didn't know your worth," he said. "But she lost someone who cared for her more than she ever deserved." His words didn't feel bitter. They felt true. I took a deep breath. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Not of being alone, but of starting again." "That's normal," he said. "But new beginnings often feel like endings at first." We talked for a while about life, about plans, about how pain can shape a person in ways they never expect. And somewhere during that conversation, something in me shifted. I realized I wasn't afraid of moving on anymore. I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't even angry at Marina. I just felt done, finally done. A quiet acceptance settled inside me. Not a forced one, not a painful one, just a peaceful sense of closure. Later, when I lay down to rest, I whispered something to myself, soft, honest, and full of hope. I will heal. I will grow. And one day, I will love again. But this time, I'll choose better. The next morning, I packed my things. Not because I wanted to run away, but because I was ready to go home, ready to face life again with a clearer mind and a stronger heart. As I stepped outside, the sunlight touched my face, warm and gentle, almost like a sign. A new chapter was waiting for me. A chapter where I wasn't begging to be chosen, where I wasn't holding on to broken pieces, where I wasn't losing myself to keep someone else. This time, I was choosing myself. And that was the beginning of everything I had been searching for.